We have Lance Ramsey on the podcast today. If you don't know who he is, check him out, Lance_Ramsey, and add a 46 to the end of that if you're on Instagram. But I found him a few months ago, and he is a project manager for a home builder in Nashville, Tennessee. And he has been doing these day in the life videos, which I find really fun to watch. He talks a little bit more specifically about how that he's changed his content, but he talks about it in a way that, I think will resonate with a lot of people that want to get into this industry and don't have a clear understanding as to how they can be a project manager. And he documents it in a really fun way. So we talked to him and how he got into the industry. And he also, what was he going to be? A cartograph?
Cartographer. Well, he was a
Not cartograph.
cartographer.
Cartograph is probably something else.
I think that's made up. I think that's a
Yeah,
mix between cartographer and cauterizing, maybe. I don't know what you're talking about.
Cauterizing? Where are you?
You just said cartograph.
Yeah,
What the
I
heck's
think
a
it's the product.
cartograph?
I think it's a product of a cartographer.
A cartograph?
I don't know, Tyler.
I don't know what you're talking about either.
Whatever.
I can't believe you didn't know what a cartographer was.
I'm not that smart. I'm not that
Jeez.
smart, dude.
So he was a cartographer.
He was.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that is, we tell you in a little bit.
Yeah, you'll find out. Yeah, I like what he's doing. I like his videos. They're very engaging, very informative, super simple. They're cool to watch. I like what he's doing. So check him out. Check him out on Instagram, TikTok. He said there's more to come, so keep an eye out. Let's get rolling.
This podcast is also brought to you by Andersen Windows. It's no surprise that millions of homeowners have chosen the Andersen 400 series windows. Built on decades of engineering and design, these products simply work every single day.
With plenty of options to fit the look and feel of any home, it's no wonder why Andersen 400 series are the most recommended clad wood windows by contractors. Check them out for yourself, along with resources for sizing and installation at andersenwindows.com/professionals or the link in the description of this episode. I feel like the link is just easier.
Just click the link, guys.
Hit the link.
Yeah, we didn't catch that. This podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. Life is hard, but running your construction business doesn't have to be.
Life is really, I feel like that's a bad way to lead this off because life's super hard right now. But with Buildertrend's to-do features, you can create and assign tasks for your team, subs, and even your clients. Everyone knows what to do, when to do it.
Sorry, I almost fell over my chair because life is so hard. I literally almost tipped my chair over. But with that being said, yeah, you can set automatic reminders and link tasks to schedule items to guarantee that nothing slips through the cracks, like my chair. You can also template your to-dos so punch list items get copied from job to job without having to manually enter them every time. Speaking of which, we talk about the to-do list, and Lance actually said, I wonder if Buildertrend could copy and paste the to-do list from job to job. Well, Lance, now that you're listening to this ad, you know that they can.
They're on it. Cut down on all the back and forth when you sign up for Buildertrend's construction management software today and start using to-dos. Schedule a free demo by going to buildertrend.com/mcdemo.
And lastly, want to shout out to Harnish Workwear for putting together our swag. They're actually going to be putting together a product discount code for us. So you guys want to print your own company t-shirts, you can work directly with Harnish, the same t-shirts that we have all the Modern Craftsman t-shirts printed on. And if you didn't get one, you guys have some work to do because you got to encourage us to open that sale back up and do another run of those t-shirts. And in the meantime, the website is live with not only pencils, which are USA made, but we also partnered with Hive Notebooks, which if you don't know who Hive Notebooks, they're, what are they? Vegan leather and stone paper notebooks that are designed for makers, designed in the US by Ken DeCoste. They are also branded MC on the moderncraftsman.co shop. Head over there, make sure you get your notebook, your pencil, and well, we only have a limited of each. So
the paper is some sort of like charcoal paper or something.
It's stone paper, so you literally cannot rip it.
Yeah, and it's waterproof.
It's waterproof. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good notebook. If you need a job site notebook,
yeah,
go for it. How are
Great.
you? I'm Tyler.
I'm Lance. Nice to meet you. I don't know a
Good
ton
to meet
about you,
you.
but excited to get to talk to you guys. But I'm doing good.
Cool.
Hopefully, my
Sweet.
dog doesn't scratch on the door while we're recording here.
Hey, it adds to the flavor, man. You're in Louisville,
Nashville,
Nashville. Why
yeah,
did I think you were in Louisville? I had
southern.
no idea.
It's close.
All right, but
I
you're
don't
not
feel.
from
Is it?
Nashville,
Is
right?
it that close?
I think it's a few hours. I've never been there, but I know a lot of people from there have moved here.
Down there, a few hours is close, Tyler. Up here, a few hours is
I
like I
guess
went from
so.
Yes.
Massachusetts to New York. You're not from Nashville, right?
No, I'm from St. Louis originally.
Got it. I'm stoked
How'd
to have you on.
How'd
Tyler,
you
have
end
you,
up down there?
That's really for home building, to be completely honest. My in-laws moved down here a few years ago, and then my wife and I came to visit several times and just saw the construction that was going on down here, and so we put plans together to make the move once I'd found a job. So it,
I'm
I
looking
mean,
up a map right now. Not that
partially
I
because
don't
of the home
believe you,
building,
but
partially we just wanted something different. We thought the area was beautiful, so well, several different reasons, but home building was definitely one of those.
so I've been to Nashville, like downtown, but I've never really explored outside of that. Where are you in relation to downtown?
We're in Williamson County, which is south of Nashville, about
Hmm.
30 minutes out, you know, relatively close.
Got it.
20 miles or
I
so.
didn't
And
realize that Nashville. Sorry, I'm not paying attention at all. I'm
no,
on a map
you're
right now.
definitely looking to see how long.
No, so when I thought of Louisville in Kentucky, I was just thinking essentially it was due west, and obviously from New Jersey, it's like a little bit south, but mostly west. I don't think I realized that Nashville was so far north.
Yeah. Yeah, it still gets
I
pretty cold
mean,
here.
like
Oh, well, now I need to look at what
I
you're
mean,
talking about.
it's like essentially due east of like the southern part of Virginia.
Mhm.
I don't know why I thought it was like more south than that. I feel like people in Nashville shouldn't even have super southern accents. They're not even that far south.
Yeah, I don't notice it a ton. I mean, you can, because there's so many new people moving here, it's kind of hard to tell who's native and not, but there are some folks that you meet who are from like the rural parts of Tennessee, and you could tell usually. But I feel like it's leaving the area. The accents are leaving.
Yeah. Sorry. I wasn't paying attention other than just looking at a map. Now Nick's looking at a map.
I am looking at a map. I also didn't realize it was so far north.
Yeah. You've been there too, right?
Yeah, but I don't. I look at.
Just
I'm
fly
not
in.
looking at where I am in relation. The only time I've ever looked at where I was in relationship to the
Is when the
United
back of the
States.
plane seat shows
No,
you.
no, yeah, well that's true. But when I was, we had JP on last week. When I was at the event with him, I was like, I feel like I'm not even in the United States anymore, and I was on the border of the U.S. and Canada, so that was the only time I've referenced that.
Are you guys both from Boston,
No, I'm in New Jersey,
New
but I'm
Jersey?
like real close to Philadelphia.
Got you. Never really
Yeah, I
been to
live
the
in
Northeast at all.
Boston.
My wife is there in Connecticut right now. She flies home tonight, but I've personally not ventured out that direction. I'd love to, just
How
haven't.
come? Just haven't.
Nope.
I'm still looking at this map. Sorry, Nick, what were you saying before?
So I was gonna say, Lance, we connected a couple months ago, probably
Mhm.
maybe more than that at this point.
Yep.
And don't worry about your dog. I know, I know he's barking,
Yeah. Hopefully they'll
or she.
stop.
But you took, y- in my opinion, like you kind of popped out of nowhere and you started documenting your journey into a project manager for a home builder,
Right.
and I fell down a rabbit hole. I was watching all your stuff. Like I think you document it really well.
Mhm.
It's super interesting in the way you document it. I also, because we film so much, I'm also watching you do this, and I'm like, this is an insane amount of moving the camera around and saying the same line, like I don't know if you do it with a script or not. We can get into the technical side of it, but my point and the biggest reason I wanted you on here is I think that you're doing a huge service for your like for the industry, but also for like people that could be in your role. And I think you talk about that a lot is like, hey, this is how you could get started in construction management.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to just unpack that. You say you moved to Nashville for home building, but unpack. I know you've told this story on social media, but here's a
Mhm.
new platform to do so. Would love to just unpack your journey into home building.
Yeah. So I think I had a very traditional like approach to young adulthood with like going to college and studying something that you may be interested in, but maybe not really. So I got a college degree and then got a desk job right out of college. And I realized that I hated it. And I was fortunate enough that my dad back in my hometown had like a remodeling, and we did some new construction, but it was just him and his employee. He's never here. He was the only employee. He never had any other employees, and so he kind of went out on a limb to hire me because I really didn't know a ton. Even though he was in the home building business, I didn't grow up doing a ton of stuff. So
Mm,
I kind of spent the first year kind of just learning and sweeping houses and carrying drywall and just the most miscellaneous things that you can imagine. And I really was enjoying it and super happy. And so I spent the next 3 years just learning sort of every facet of the trade. And that was what I found very fortunate about the situation I found myself in with it being a remodeling company. Like I just did a ton of stuff. And
yeah.
so then once I had that education and like I said, I came down to Nashville to visit my in-laws and saw all the construction going on down here. I just decided that I felt like that was sort of the next stepping stone. My hometown is rather small, so it's not a place where you'd grow some type of large business or I don't even know if there's project managers that work for builders in my area, to be honest. So it was sort of one of those things
Mhm.
that I had to move for the position that I was looking for. So then once I decided on that, I just started reaching out to home builders in the Nashville area, and luckily it was like a booming time. So not I didn't really have a hard time getting in contact with builders, and I just settled on like one of the first two that I had spoke to. Um,
Mm.
and I think you've met the president and then my boss, but it's been a while. I think it was at like a Buildertrend meeting um, somewhere. I don't know.
What's in it? I actually don't even know who you work for.
Legend Homes. I
Okay.
don't know. I mean, they're in Builder 20, but I don't think you guys cross
We're
paths
not in the
very often.
same
I feel
builder
like it's been a
20.
while before since then,
Yeah.
since it was like it's been
Okay.
over 2 years. So,
Yeah. So going back to your dad for a minute, you said that you weren't really exposed to it until you kind of, weaseled, for lack of
yeah,
better terms, weaseled your way into
convinced
working
him.
with your
Yeah.
dad. Yeah, convinced him. Why, was it his like why didn't he introduce it to you sooner? Was he trying to avoid you getting into that business or
I think so. I think that like because he was the only employee of his remodeling company, he found himself doing a lot of the work himself, and so it's really backbreaking work. And he started as a framer and built a framing company, and then he's doing this remodeling work now. So he's just always kind of been in the physical part of construction, and so I think he was trying to just point me in a different direction that was just as lucrative, if not more, and then it was less physically taxing on my body. Um,
Mhm.
Knowing what he knows now, obviously, I think he would have exposed me more. But I just don't think I showed a ton of interest in it. Like it was sort of a maturing thing that took me to the point where like I got to an age where I realized like whatever path I pick, I'm gonna have to do this for the rest of my life or until I get sick of it. And so I really started to like key in on my emotion of like what do I enjoy doing and what makes me tick. And it just so happened that it was
Mm.
construction. I really didn't realize that until my very last semester of college. I worked during the summer for him. Um, and I remember being done at the end of the summer and having to go back to school and being like, this sucks. Like I don't really want to go back to school. Like I'd rather just continue working. Um, but I also felt like I needed to sort of see that through. And then I also wanted to just do the job that I got out of college to make sure that that wasn't the right path either. And it definitely wasn't. So
What'd you go to school for?
I started out as a geography major and then I finished that. And then falling in line with my sort of indecision as a young kid, I then switched to finance. And so then I double majored as a geography major and a finance major. And then
Damn.
my job for right out of school was actually for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as a cartographer.
That's what I was gonna ask if you're gonna be a cartographer.
You
That's
know,
sick. I didn't know that like people actually did that.
yeah. Well, it was a government job, and so there was parts about it that I'm sure were very different than what I would have
Nick's looking
experienced
up
at a normal.
cartographer right now.
Listen, don't blow my spot, man. What is it?
As we were just pulling up maps, looking at where shit is
Oh,
in the United States.
yeah, he's
That's
very
so, like I
unimpressed.
feel like that if you go
Hold on,
to
hold
school
on.
for geography, you're either going to be a cartographer or a teacher.
For
Yeah,
those that don't know what a cartographer is, it's a person who draws or produces maps.
correct. That's
I would have
exactly right.
you. Well, I know it. Google. I'm reading it verbatim. But I would have never known that. I
Yeah.
would have went this whole episode wondering.
Yeah, it's all digital now, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was
So
interesting.
what was your first job? Like what did you do?
As a
Like I don't
cartographer,
feel
like,
that
what was my first
yeah, like
task? Because it was the US Army Corps of Engineers, we were doing, like, aerial imagery for, like, military bases, and it wasn't, like, super high security stuff. There's a different part of the US government that does mapping for that, but it was, like, a lot of aerial imagery, and so, to be completely honest, the very first few tasks were, like, going through aerial imagery, like, zooming in and making sure that like images that they would capture would align perfectly, and like a building that was captured in two different images wouldn't be misaligned when the software went to put them together. So it was really just boring like work that I was sitting in my cubicle doing. So
I mean, let's be honest though. When you chose this as a major, did you think this was going to be like a very exciting career path?
I don't think, I just didn't have the foresight to like really think about what that job was going to be. I definitely, that was part of the reason for switching to finance. Um, but then it just like turned out that the cartography was like where the opportunity was at. So, but
Yeah.
it's all worked out now.
So then how long did you work for your dad prior to making the move?
It was almost right at 3 years.
That was a pretty long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I
Did he
mean,
hire somebody after you left?
no, there's some like subcontractors that we would use that he's just had to use more of.
Yeah.
But he complains about it, about not having me around to help do stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I worked for my dad for a minute and it was really really difficult. And I couldn't make it work. Especially when it's just essentially like you two. That's a lot of each other.
Yeah. I mean, he was making
It,
all the business decisions. I was really just doing like work. So, I mean, and we've had a good relationship. So it was never any time where we butted heads. But I can imagine like if the time went on and I started to take on more responsibilities, like maybe there was some discrepancies in opinions of what we should do. And I just, was the employee and kind of followed his rules. And I was learning so much that I didn't have a ton of knowledge to sort of tell him that he was doing something wrong. So
yeah.
But when you say learning, like, what was because your dad worked by himself, so he wasn't. I can't imagine you plugged in and he's like, "All right, let me walk you through step by step how to do this." Was it? I mean, maybe he was, but
no, yeah, no.
was it that? Or yeah, it was. By process of paying
Failure.
attention and what? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, YouTube was a huge resource, like just learning how to do everyday sort of like projects around the house. And it was kind of where I learned like drywall is a perfect example, like learning how to tape a corner and, tape seams, like that sort of thing. I could really just learn off of YouTube. And then the fact that it was it was my dad's company. So like I could, basically test it out and learn,
Mhm.
was kind of just where I would start, and he would start me off on something that was like very low risk, like a small little patch on a wall that I could fix, and then it was just like that, but for every facet you can imagine, like painting and trim carpentry and framing. Like
So he was pretty open to it.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Like, go
was.
ahead, go patch that.
Yeah,
Hmm. I feel like that. I mean, a lot in that situation. I feel like a lot of times, the person, especially like someone like Tyler, right, where he works alone, it's, as much as he would want to train someone, it's also, we need to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this constant balance of like, as much as I know that you could go and patch that and we could fix it if we don't have the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're just,
It depends on what part of the project you're at too. Like there at the beginning of the job, I think that you're more gracious with your time. And you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna teach you through this, through that." And then like as the job starts to close down and you're getting towards the end, it's like, I don't care what you do. Just stay busy and don't bother me because I have so much shit to do right now that like I just don't want to answer. Now is not the time for you to learn. Um so it really it's dependent on what point of the project that you're in. I think you can also tell how much stake somebody has where it's like, are they why do they want to learn this? Are they going to be around? Am I wasting my time? Is this somebody where I'm like trying to teach them and they're just here for a paycheck? So it all depends.
yeah. And I don't want to say he didn't teach me anything. Like there was, you know, tons of things that I learned that were small things, but it wasn't like I'm going to spend the day showing you how to do this part and then, do it next time. And then I would
Right.
also, because I was around, like I would learn from the other trades, like the cabinet
Mm.
install. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory to install a vanity cabinet, but until you've done it, you don't really know. And so if I was there painting, like I would just ask them questions about what they were doing and watch essentially was the whole point of
Mm.
it. And you can just learn. I just learned a lot doing it that way. And he was gracious enough to be patient. And I think part of it too was like the workforce isn't super abundant with like great tradesmen around our hometown. It was, like I said, it was fairly small. So people just inevitably had to be patient with their projects, and like the deadlines weren't, like they just weren't as big of a deal as like they are now with home closings and such.
Mm. It's when I was a child, my parents would. My dad owned a fence company, and he very much worked with his hands when he was younger, but took the role of a businessman as I think as quickly as he could. So growing up, he was never really a handy person. He wouldn't be working on the house, but we would constantly be having work done on the house. So there'd be contractors in and out of the house, and I don't remember the story, but my mom specifically reminds me all the time that I would rush home from school and I would sit there and I would ask 100 questions to everyone that was working on it. And one of some carpenter was down in the basement working, and they were like building these 2 bedrooms, and I was down there asking 100 questions. And he walked upstairs and he was like, "Can you get your kid out of my way? Like he will not stop asking me questions."
Yep.
And they fired him. And they were like, "No." Like and they fired him and found someone else. And I'll never forget this guy, Bob Dennison, old guy, showed up in overalls. Everything was hand tools, like all his toolboxes he built by hand, and just old school guy. And he made it clear, he was like, "I don't like kids." And I was like, "Cool." Anyway, I'm Nick and I have 100 questions. And him and I like hit it off. And I remember I found a pair of overalls. I don't know where, but I found him and I put him on so I look like him. And I would just sit there and ask him questions, and he would sit there and like take his time and teach me and tell me how to do things. And and he was there for years working on our house. And I owe a lot of what I learned as a carpenter to him.
Mhm.
But it's interesting because I think you're what you're experiencing in Nashville is so much what we're experiencing in the Northeast, where it's the time to educate and train is oftentimes overshadowed by the demand to get something done, and the schedule and the impacts that um, we essentially put on ourselves, right? Like
Mhm.
the clients, demand, a faster timeline or so on and so forth. And you go to somewhere like Germany or Switzerland, it's like they're way more respectful of the time it takes. It's a way more relaxed environment. It's yeah, it's work, and like they're producing, but it's way more thinking long term,
Mhm.
and just thinking about hey, we have to train, and we have to set realistic expectations and not work in this such a mode of constantly grinding.
Yeah.
What so you've been working for this company now for 2 years, you
Yeah.
said? So I know that a lot of people now are like, "Hey, don't get into the construction industry." They said there's trouble with the amount of qualified labor, people coming into our industry. But obviously, you're a younger man and you've somewhat just entered this industry. What's your perspective of it coming from another background, obviously going to school for something else and then entering the construction industry? Like, do you feel that it's provided you with like a good occupation, with an opportunity to grow within this, to remain within construction for the rest of the year? Like, is this a good career path for you?
Yeah. I definitely think so. I mean, I think what's a little bit challenging now is, and I think people ask this question a lot when they see my videos, is like, how do I sort of like get to that point and not do any of the hands-on part of construction, which is what makes up the majority of the workforce. Um, and I still see that as a challenge. I just, when kids can go out and like make more money doing something on their computer or working remote and not having to put their body through what it takes to build houses, um, I think that's where the real kind of challenge exists. And I don't have a great answer for that, to be honest. I mean, I enjoyed doing that, but even myself was like, I see more opportunity and the benefits of having a project management role as opposed to being the laborer, being a framer, and that kind of thing. So I don't know if that problem is solved. And I don't know, Nick, if you like experienced what was getting the people in Europe, the kids, to get interested in the actual physical labor part of it all.
It's I mean, it starts with the school. It's way more of a respected occupation.
Mm-hmm.
It's, like we toured one school and, we posted a video on YouTube and people were like, yeah, this is standard over here. Why is this so special to you?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so special to me because every kid there wanted to be there and they were respected and they were treated like this was a serious occupation. Not, hey, if you don't do good in school, don't worry, you can go to a trade school and just be a trade.
Right.
That was my experience getting into the trade school.
So,
I've told
sorry.
no, I was
Go.
just, I've told that story before where it's like I remember applying to trade school and being nervous that I wasn't going to get in. And my guidance counselor was like, "What are you talking? Even the bad kids get into that school."
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget it. And I'm like that,
Even all the
here
stupid kids get in there.
yeah, here I am, like, working my ass off, hoping that I get into the school that is like in my eyes the dream school. And like, yeah, man, like don't worry about it. You'll get in. Everyone gets in. And it's like now it's not special anymore. Where over there, the school, it's just respected. And Mike Rowe talks about it, where it's not one or the other. It's, he said it. I'm gonna paraphrase, but he basically says it's not be a welder over a lawyer. Like it's just if someone wants to be a lawyer or wants to be a welder, that decision needs to be respected equally.
Yeah.
And we're not we're having these like pendulum swings of respect where it's like, don't be blue collar, like that's for the bad kids, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, everyone should be blue collar, get in the trade, you make more money, screw college. It's like, wait, no, college is great if you're going to be a lawyer. Like you need college for if you want to be a lawyer. You don't need to go to college if you want to be an electrician, but that doesn't make one better than the other.
Right.
And it's like that, like classic meme going around on, it's like, hey, my friend Bob went to college and is $200,000 in debt and makes $50,000 a year. And this guy is an electrician and he makes, $100,000 a year and $0 in debt. It's like, yeah, all you're doing is now swinging the pendulum back to the trades. It's not that. It's like the decision to go into like college has its own issues. Like the debt around college is its own issue. But the point is like we're swinging this respect back and forth, and the reality is like it just needs to be equal. So that's my long-winded answer as to why I think kids are more apt to get into a trade over there and work appropriately.
Was your decision to basically take the bags off Lance financially motivated, or was it like more of a career? Hey, this is not what I want to be doing. Like where was the decision?
Um, it, I feel like maybe it was maybe a little bit financial, just seeing the potential of working as a project manager and then working my way up through a company. Um,
Yeah,
but I still sort of struggle with that. Like I don't really do anything with my hands now other than like projects around my house, and I miss sort of that um, the easiness of it. I guess is like you could just show up and you had a really simple task at hand, and at the end of the day there was something physically that changed and it felt good, and then you could go home and not think about it. But it was, I guess, sort of two things. I mean, I think the biggest was getting myself in an area where I felt like I could grow in either this business and in this company that I work for now, or potentially at some point have my own company. There was a lot of people leaving my hometown, and so just like building a business there, building anything really there was, I was just not really possible unless it was something online. So that, I mean, I don't have a great answer to be honest, but it was several things.
yeah. I guess the reason I ask is I feel that most people, if they're looking to get into construction, are not going to be, at least at this point, for years, it's been beaten into us that you don't want to work with your hands and that that's not where the money is. And then you should own your own company or start your own company. And even with Nick was saying with European countries, and it's like, I feel like so much of what motivates us here and our decisions are financially driven.
Mm.
And if you were given the opportunity, right, you could be a PM or you could be a carpenter and you make the same amount of money. Like, what's your decision at that point? And I think that most people go the PM route because from a career perspective, they feel that that can provide them with long-term financial gain more so than carpentry. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but I think that that's generally speaking the way that the decisions are made within our construction economy in the United States. Um, to end up being a super, to end up being a PM, but then you also had the experience where you did work with your hands, and I would argue that that experience probably made you who you are today as a project manager.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you can have one without the other, but I often do wonder. It's like, hey, if you had the decision between working with your hands every day or being a PM or being a super, and you were able to make the same amount of money, what would your decision be? Because I think that a lot of people would make their decision differently based on the economic scale of that position.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Nick, I know that that's not the case, but if you had people internally that could make as much being a carpenter as a project manager, do you think that more people would be interested in working with your hands?
Um, yeah, I think some, um, and definitely some that I have lost. I think that if money was no object, I think that they would have chosen different paths within the
Yeah.
company. Yeah,
And I think that that's just, I don't know what it's, I can't speak to what it's like in these other countries, but I think that one of the big issues is that if you're choosing to work with your hands, you're capping yourself.
here,
Yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. I think
And
over there they make a much higher wage.
yeah, exactly. And I think that that's the big difference. I think that so many people end up hanging the bags up because there's more lucrative avenues within the industry. And if it weren't the case, I think that it would be different. Like, I think that there's a lot of people who are supers or PMs, and that's not what they love. It's just what provides them like a means of income. It's
So
it's I think that it's definitely something to consider. I don't know how we can balance that pay scale or if it's possible. Um, but I think that a lot of people would choose a different path. I was just curious, Lance, if you had chosen the path that you did because it's like, hey, I don't necessarily want to work with my hands, and this is going to provide me with a higher paying position long term. Like, there's more room for growth here than continuing doing what your dad did.
Yeah, I think it was just it was sort of financially a step up, but um, the cost of living here was higher, so it was sort of like this
Yeah,
no, like nothing gained. But just I see the future of this area, and I want to get in here early and sort of cement myself as sort of a player in the game, and then uh, learn as much as I can, and then at some point go out on my own and build a business. And I just know that that didn't exist in my hometown.
yeah. So you said that you interviewed with two companies, or you had narrowed it down to two companies. What were the key factors in you either selecting those two companies or making the decision to go with the company that you chose?
It really was. It wasn't a choice. The very first company that I spoke to, they were looking to hire somebody in the future, but it wasn't like an immediate thing. And at the time, my wife had taken a new job, so we were like, we had this 2 month span of like getting a job and then finding a house. And so it just, I basically emailed the president of the company that I work for now, just on a whim, and so, put my resume in there and had a short description about what I was looking for. And he got back to me and we had a phone interview. And then the next time I came to visit, I had an in person interview with like four of them. And then kind of the rest was history after that. They offered me the job. And then we had the chore of finding a house in the middle of the housing crisis.
Yeah. Were they looking for did you say that you knew one company was looking to hire later on? Was this company looking for somebody at this point, or did you just basically take a shot in the dark and email them?
Yeah, it was just a shot in the dark. I mean, I think I've found that I haven't looked in a while, but it seems like a lot of the builders around here aren't super keen on like putting a job opening out on Indeed or LinkedIn. And like if you email them and you have good skills and a good resume, then they'll be interested in hiring you. So I give that advice to a lot of the people who will DM me about how to kind of get to where I'm at, is just to email a lot of your builders in the area. Nick, you probably maybe have gotten a couple emails. I've definitely sent guys your way. Because it's sort of one of those things where like you may not be consciously thinking that you're going to hire somebody, but in the end, like
yeah.
you make good hires just based on people. And so that's kind of how I ended up where I was at. But yeah.
So what was entry like coming into this new company? And this is obviously your first time working as a PM for another company. So what did that look like? What did the entry into this position look like for you?
My biggest struggle was trying to do too many things myself, and not like delegating the tasks to the subcontractor. The perfect example was our trim carpenter cut the casing on one of the exterior doors like an inch too short. And instead of having him come back and do it himself, and he was in the neighborhood, I just like went and had him cut the casing, and I like nailed it on myself. And it's just little things like that that I wasn't. I was thinking I was being productive because I was like just getting it done, but I was really wasting a ton of time doing stuff like that and not walking the house and blue taping it or looking for punch items and like calling people and emailing. So like just little things like that I had to sort of untrain about myself of like, okay, well, you're not doing it yourself anymore. It's somebody else is
Mm.
going to do it, and you need to make sure they show up, and you need to have all the material there and know what they're going to do when they show up. So that was
Did
probably the
somebody
biggest
teach you
struggle.
that? Did
Um,
somebody like have to sit you down and be like, "Hey, this isn't
Yeah, I
productive,"
had to
or is that something you just
get
learned on your
some
own?
yeah, some feedback for sure about like this is where you're spending your time, and you should be spending your time on these tasks. I also struggled in the beginning of like sort of blaming the subcontractors for things not going right. Like, man, I can't get the tile guy to show up. Like he won't answer me. And really it's because I didn't give them a big enough heads up, or like I just didn't do my due diligence to sort of set that right expectation. And so when I was trying to get them there the week of, it was just they were blowing me off because it's this new kid who doesn't understand that they have a
Yeah.
ton going on. So there was a learning curve for sure. And I just now feel like, 2 years in, I'm like really firing on all cylinders. It took a while to finally get to that point.
I
Yeah,
think that's one of the things that I find my team struggles with a lot is, getting in touch with trades, or like, hey, we're struggling to get so and so to show up. And I think about what you just said. It's like, well, when was the first time you reached out, and how are you reaching out? And it's my immediate reaction is like, do I need to email them? Do I need to call them?
Yeah, there.
Because they know if I call, like, they'll pick up the phone right away. Hey, what's up, Nick?
Yep.
And it's the most frustrating thing, and it's frustrating for me and for my team. And a couple years ago, I remember talking to one of my trades. I'm like, can you explain to me why you can't answer my PM? Like, I got mad.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, dude, like, they gave us no heads up.
Yep.
Like, so yeah, they're asking for something. I'm doing my best, man. Like, if I knew about this a month ago, it would have been a different story. But they're asking me to be out there next week, and I want to make it work because I want to do it for you. But they really got to give me more of a heads up in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, yeah. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm not doing a good enough job training my team to explain, like, at least catch them up to speed as to like, hey, you got to be more proactive. And that's one of the things, like, again, going back to your channel, it's like, that's one of the things I really appreciate is what you showcase is how proactive you are. Now, everyone knows, like, Instagram's one thing and reality
Right.
is reality, but like you're showcasing a lot of the things that are these proactive, we'll call them tips.
Mm-hmm.
And I constantly will grab them and share them with my group. And I can't remember the specific example, but I want to say it was an electrical layout video you did,
Mm-hmm.
and it was right after we had an electrical layout issue, and they skipped a step which I had asked them to do, which you so artfully displayed in your video,
Right.
and I just dropped it in the group chat and I just left it. And I was like, I know that they're watching this and they're gonna be like, oh, but but that's what it comes down to. Like, I think I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your, like, the early days more, because that I think is the most difficult part for someone young that's jumping into a new company and trying to develop relationships with trades and getting them to answer the phone.
Yeah.
The other side of it, and I think I'm probably sharing this more as like a tip that I've learned, is that I also will see, sometimes I'm CC'd on emails, and they'll go into this long drawn out list of like, hey, I need you to do this and that, and I'm hoping that you can do this. And it's just this long drawn out email.
Mm-hmm.
And, I sat down with one of my PMs a couple months ago, and or my supers a couple months ago. I'm like, hey, when you get a long email, do you read the whole thing?
I
Or
don't
do you-
read an email even if it's short.
But hold on. But hear me, like, Tyler, I know, like, there's an email in my inbox that I have not responded to that pinged me again that you're copied on today.
Yo,
And
I just
hold
looked
on,
at that on
I
my
know.
way home, and I sent it to myself as like a reminder to
course.
do it once we get
Because
off of this.
because it's long and you can't address that in the moment. However,
while I'm driving, I can't address that while I'm driving.
let's be clear. No addressing while I'm driving. But to be like, if that email was like, hey,
Here's
I'm
a
just
link.
here, or hey, just confirming that you're good for the 24th. Oh, I can answer that. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I see the trade communication slip up, is that they want to come in with all the information. It's like, I have all these questions. Here's all my questions. Please respond. It's like, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
Where it's like, what's the most pressing thing? Well, it's like, I need to know, when I'm going to have the floor sample. Great. Hey, when am I going to have that floor sample? Send. It's
Can I
way easier
expect
for
to
some.
have that floor sample
Shit.
by
Yeah,
Tuesday?
yeah.
Question
I mean,
mark.
even better. Like get hey, I'm expecting to see that floor sample Tuesday. I'm gonna have that, right. And now that it's harder for them to back out of. But the point is like you learn this, and I'm sure in 2 years in, you've learned this as well, where it's the style of communication needs to be tailored for every person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, some people are a phone call. I have guys that I text and they're immediately call me, and then I'm texting them like, I can't talk right now. I'm actually in a meeting that I should be paying attention to, but I'm just trying to catch up on, the communication that I need from you.
Yeah.
So in the early days, as a PM, facing some of those challenges, what were, beyond obviously walking down the street and having a piece of casing cut and nailing it up yourself, what were some of those challenges, and how did you work through them and recognize that you needed to improve?
Yeah, I mean, I think my my eye for when things like when the next steps needed to start getting rolling, like as the brick masons were finishing the rowlock around the front porch, like I should have already have reached out to the concrete guy about graveling that porch and then coming up and setting the any forms that they needed to. And so just kind of getting the timing of it all and seeing like the painters are out here working right now, but I need to reach out to the gutter guy to let him know that he can go ahead and put it on the schedule. Because instead of reaching out to him as soon as the painting's done and realizing, okay, now I need to get the gutters done, there's like a time loss in there where like they can't get to it the very next day. And so just like kind of learning those steps and then learning, how long each trade takes, just basically as many reps as I could get, it is really what taught me it. And just some patience on my company's part to like let me learn on some spec houses that there wasn't a huge rush to necessarily get that market home ready to go. So it was worthwhile for them to maybe let me just kind of do it as I saw it fit, and then realize at the end of it, like, this took me 8 months, when now I look back and like there's houses that I've built in like 6 months, but it's the same exact sort of footprint and style and everything about it. So just kind of learning the timeline. I think the biggest thing though, and you touched on it, was those relationships with the trades and getting them to trust you. And the biggest thing that I've found is that if you can send them like a screenshot of a list, or pictures are great, anything that is something that they could just then share with their employees to then go out there, and they don't have to show up to like walk them through everything. Like it's already on the list. Just send them the list. It's just like you said, a simple sort of, not a long email. It's a simple text with a list of things that need to get done and when they're there, and then just making sure that the material's there for them is probably the thing that I think helped them build trust in me, and then them start answering my calls and text when I reached out to them.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you have these relationships with subcontractors, and the difference between you being able to make their lives as easy as possible and their willingness to work for you, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, me and the sub just don't get along, and you have to question why. Is it because of you? Is it because of them? Are you being hard nosed? What's that relationship look like? And I found that like the subs that I get along with the best are the subs that I'm willing to help them out, to bend over backwards for them to make their lives as easy as possible. And I feel like that ends up being reciprocal. But
Yeah.
like you have to go, there's so many subs you have to go through to get there. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it isn't. But how much you're willing to do for a sub and help them out when they need help. And even sometimes it's just like being a little bit flexible, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, I can't get there this day. Can we switch it to this day, instead of like giving them a ration of shit about it? It's like, yeah, I can bump this around, and then but as long as I can get you here this date. And I think that that really makes for a good subcontractor, general contractor, or builder relationship.
Yeah. Totally agree. Hey, I'm going to grab my computer charger real quick.
Sure. Um,
Have you seen his videos?
Yeah, I like them. They're good.
Yeah.
I want to ask him like what his boss thinks of his videos, where it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
as long as you're getting done what you're getting done, is it an issue? But I mean, they have to take time.
Yeah. I mean, I you know, just the script itself, I feel like it's so seamless, and I know it's not I don't believe it's a voiceover. Like,
I think a bunch of it's voiceover. I'm pretty sure.
Lance, can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Are your
I'm good
videos
now.
voiceover?
Huh?
Are your videos voiceover? Like,
Some
are
of
you
them.
recording the audio app?
Yeah, some of them. The ones that are
But not
like
all.
they're 1 second clips, and then
Mm.
like those are all voiceover videos.
Like, I feel like I'll watch a video and it will be you in your truck, be like, all right, I gotta stop at this job and I gotta check layout, and then it goes immediately to you inside checking layout, but then you're talking to the camera and be like, and when I check I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with how they're put together and how efficient you seem
Well,
at
thank
it.
you.
So how did that start? With you like documenting what you're doing.
I always wanted to do content. Like growing up, I was like obsessed with YouTube and like YouTubers and stuff.
How old are you?
27.
Mm.
And then
Young.
I met my wife, and I basically was like telling her, I still remember it, she does too, like we were talking about it, and I was like, she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'd really like to make content and like make money from content. And that was just about 3 years ago. And then so I just slowly started, like as I was working for my dad's company, like I would just do really dumb, like if you scroll way back my TikTok, you'll see them, but they're like, tips on whatever. Screwing in like a stud that's too short is a good example. Like that one went really viral, and I may have got 500 followers or yeah, followers from that. And it just sort of was like a trigger, like a just snowball effect. After that, I kind of continued to make little videos for, while I was working for my dad. And then I moved to Tennessee and stopped for a year, and didn't know if I would go back to it. I just was like working. And then about this time last year is when I started the day in the life of, Project Manager. And it just like skyrocketed off of that. I probably had like 100,000 followers at the time that I started that. And people just really thought that was interesting. I think that it's sort of maybe ran its course now, like the voiceover day in the life kind of videos. I feel like it sort of had a lifespan. It captured the audience that cared about that kind of thing. And now it's like the engagement I get off of those is completely different than like the engagement I get off of going over what I failed at a frame inspection, or going over preparing for a home inspector to come through. So it's sort of evolving, and I'll just kind of continue to keep evolving as people change what they find interesting, I guess.
So you started on TikTok with things and then transitioned to other platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
See, Nick, I'm not on TikTok.
I didn't realize TikTok was around for 3 years.
Dude, I'm not on the talk.
It used to be really easy to like go viral on TikTok. It's very different now.
So is that your what's your primary social media platform that you would say like works best for you right now?
It kind of goes in waves. Like Instagram was really good for maybe the last 6 months, and then I guess like it kind of goes in waves. Like YouTube Shorts were doing really well the last few months, but it just kind of changes. It's like whichever style I'm doing sort of applies more to like the Instagram algorithm or the YouTube Shorts. It just kind of depends. I mean, TikTok's been fairly slow, I would say. But Instagram and YouTube are still kind of chugging along with new followers and stuff.
So you told your wife that you want to make money. Are you making money at producing content now?
Yeah, I do brand deals here and there. So a little bit.
Would you consider them to be lucrative or more of a stepping stone?
I guess it depends. Like, I think it sort of depends on what I want as the next step. Like I do envision next year touching close in revenue from like content as I do from my project management role. But the content and the followers that I have been built upon the project management side of things. So I don't know if
Mhm.
there's a world in which I transition away from that and just do content, because I do aspire to, like I said, have my own building company. And I think that
Mhm.
that is probably more important of a journey than the content. I just don't think
Yeah.
that the like even if I got enough people to care about my life here in Nashville, I don't know if they would care long enough to make it make sense to give up on something that I'm doing right now. And
Yeah.
maybe it's a short term, like I don't do project management for X amount of time and then I go back to it at some point. But I mean, I think that the
I'm,
eventually the company
I
that
mean,
I'd like to build will be based upon the content that I'm creating now.
Yeah.
yeah. And then at 27 years old, like my advice would be to hustle for right now and do as much as you can of both. And like the the construction and the project management, that's your foundation. That's your constant um paycheck that's coming in.
Hmm.
And then all of these other brand deals and all of that can go towards whatever you want to, but like to keep that foundation and that source of inspiration, and that's essentially what's creating the content for you, is a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think long term, right? It's like who knows what's going to happen with social media and content and everything else. And it's like if you build a well-established building company that's going to stand the test of time, who knows what the heck's going to happen with content and everything else.
Yeah.
What does I assume that your boss and your work knows what you're doing. What do they think of all of this?
It's funny, like I was real nervous to tell them about it at first. Because like I said, I kind of like just started to pick it up about a year ago. And I got more and more followers and I hit like 150,000. I'm like, I should probably say something. Like there's
Yeah.
millions of people seeing these videos. Like I need to say something. And they were, perfectly fine with it. And I just um kind of set the right expectation that it wasn't going to be taking away from my job. And if they felt like it was, that they were free to give me that feedback. And I've just kind of kept that open line of communication. And I think at some point they would like to get me involved with their socials and try to um, do whatever I can with that. And so it's been good. I've been very fortunate to have landed in a place that is open minded and willing to, let myself carry around the camera and like show these houses that are mine and, talk about them. So I think very, very fortunate to have landed where I'm at.
It's the the comment that you mentioned where they would potentially want you to take over their social. That's always so tricky because what you do
Yeah.
is for a particular audience, and it's also for you.
Yeah.
And there will be an inherent benefit to there's an inherent benefit to them because you're putting yourself in the spotlight. So
Right.
the shit that you're skipping over and someone's calling you out on, you're learning from and then essentially building a better home
Right.
for that. That's one of the biggest reasons, that why I like doing the content because people are constantly fact checking what I'm doing, and when I'm wrong, like they're calling it out, and I'm able to fix it because it's live.
Right.
It's in the moment. But for you to then plug that in and run like create a business social media channel that isn't your face and isn't you teaching project management is, I've seen it so many times where it's like, well, why don't we have 150,000 followers? It's
Yeah.
like, well, because it's different. I'm not, you're a business trying to promote a product and I'm me promoting who I am and sharing my life journey.
Yeah. And I think I've tried to get to that point, and like I said, maybe it won't ever turn into that. Right now, I think our Instagram page does a really good job of just being a landing place for people who are
Yeah.
interested in building with us, and they can get a sense of like what we do. And this is what it kind of looks like. Um,
Hmm.
but to capture a new audience, I think it has to be different than like, I mean, you scroll on Instagram, like a lot of these home builders and real estate agents, it's like a drone video and like these videos inside the house with just music and like, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure there's like inspiration gathered from people, but I don't think they're making any decisions based on that. Um,
Right.
what I would do with it is take myself and the 6 or 7 other project managers that we have in the company and the people and sort of make it just more personal and get to know who the people are at Legend Homes
Mhm.
and gain a slower audience, I'm sure, through that, but have people who are actually interested in that and want to make a decision on who they build with because they like the people at Legend Homes.
Um,
Yeah.
I have a somewhat off. I mean, it's not really off topic, but like, if you, how many project managers do you guys have?
Like 6 or 7. I don't know.
6 or 7.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
And are you the youngest?
I have 2 other project managers that are 27 also.
Okay. How are they, like, when a job comes across their plate and they're ready to then like go through design, whatever they're doing, and then hand that job off? How are they selecting who that job's going to, or how
It's
is that
all
job landing up on your plate?
it's all regional. So like I live on the west side of Williamson County, and so there just so happens to be a neighborhood that we build in that's like 15 minutes away. And so they've sort of placed people where they're most closely located to the neighborhood that we're building in. We're starting to take on some like one-off projects that they'll have
Yeah.
to just, if somebody, maybe it's like in between myself and another project manager's kind of territory, and they just, if I have more going on, then they'll give it to him. And I think at some point we'll hand off projects, midway through potentially. Um, I don't
You
know. I,
should you could draw some maps out and figure out what the
I
best
should.
way is. I was curious. I was curious if it's that, or like, I know when you get into different types of construction at different levels and more customized home building, where it's like, we're gonna give this job to this person because this is their strong suit. And I was curious if there's something that like you feel as though certain jobs come across your plate because this is what you're good at. Obviously, if it's just geographic, then that, my question
I
is
wouldn't.
of no use there.
Yeah, I'm not a part of those decisions, so I can't speak for them. But I would think every now and then, like we did a Parade of Homes house that was like around 8 million, and that I'm sure they gave to this
Yeah.
specific project manager. Just he it just so happened that he was nearby, but he just definitely was most trusted. So
Yeah.
we
So
There's
build
what
a
do
a
you
lot in the same sort of realm of like fit and finish. So it's not
Yeah.
like I could definitely go to any neighborhood that any of the other project managers are working in and like pick things up and start, the next day and not
Yeah,
really
you
have
guys
any
have
hiccups.
your bread and butter as to what makes you money,
Yeah.
which makes sense. Sorry, Nick, what were you gonna say?
no, I just the there's a developer that I knew of probably 10 years ago that they would build all over the state, and they had the opposite approach that they would actually have the PM drive the furthest distance. So essentially, like, it was crazy. I remember
For what reason?
because they didn't want them close to their homes. I don't know why,
Hmm.
but I remember I was like, "Wait, why are you going to the south? Don't you live in the North Shore?" And he's like, "Yeah, my job's on the South Shore, and the PM that's down on the South Shore, actually, his job's up on the North Shore."
I
It's
mean,
like,
from an efficiency standpoint, that makes 0
I
sense.
know, and it was and I don't remember the specific, but it had something to do with like they want to make sure that we're at the job and we're not going home or something like that. And I was just like, that is bananas. Like, if you've never driven from the North Shore to the South Shore in Massachusetts during a workday, you don't have any uh, understanding of how brutal that is. But I mean, that's 5 hours of your day. Yeah, I don't know. So I appreciate what what Legend is doing. Um, you a couple minutes ago, you said that you guys are building homes in 6 to 8 months. Is that right?
The market home that I built was in right at 6 months. Like I think it probably trickled into 7 months with like some of the punch work, but
I mean, that's fast.
yeah, yeah, it was
So
never like it definitely didn't start out that fast, and it really like is attributed to like all the work that our office does on the front end. Like I don't, as a PM, I don't deal with any sort of like budgeting. It's all like really the house is sort of built in Buildertrend before I ever
Mhm.
get it. And all of the answers that, or all the questions that I might have are already answered really within the Buildertrend. Um, so it
Are
just
these
makes
are
it go
these
quick.
and are these custom designed every one, or are these designed
Yeah, we
like
have a designer in
are you
house, and then usually the architect will, because the lots that I'm building on are really tight, like she'll sort of
Mhm.
come up with something relatively close like that we've done before,
Got
and
it.
then just tweak it to whatever style and room sizes and that kind of thing.
And then in terms of specs and fixtures, all of that's in Buildertrend, you can plug and play. Are
Yeah.
you doing all the ordering?
I order like not no, like we have our purchasing manager, and so he
So
deals with
that
all
tile
of the
shows up and it goes into storage until you need it or shows up on the
I
job site?
schedule all like the field measuring and that kind of thing, and then they send all of that info to our purchasing manager.
And what about finance? Like your trades? Who's paying the trade? Like are you handling paying the trades?
No, some I'll issue POs for small things that are like outside of what the original budget had scoped, but yeah, I don't have really anything to do with the finances, which
So
is
if
nice.
are you selecting the trades?
No, they're already decided
So
upon. And like that's
so
why I
office
said
is
go ahead.
yeah, office is buying the job. You're hey Lance, this is the address you're going to. Here's your you know this is the site guy. Here's the concrete guy. Here's the framer. Here's the flooring guy.
Yep.
You know these are their proposal. Like, are you reviewing their contracts to understand their scope,
No,
or are you
it's all
strictly
within
production
our
and
so
quality
we have
control?
construction specs, and then it's pretty much everything is outlined in there, and every line
Mhm.
item is accounted for. Every now and then there's like some nuances about it that I'll have to ask questions about, but yeah, it's all like I said, there's pretty much an answer for every question within Buildertrend.
Well, I mean that attributes to a good process for the
Yeah.
you know the company's
Yeah, for sure.
built
Yeah, and that's where
right
I
where it's
yeah, they just they do so much work on the front end to make it really simple. So like I mean it feels fast cuz like once it's underway there is a lot of things that are happening quickly, but really all like the ordering and the decisions have already been made. So it's super easy. It makes my job really easy.
so your job by definition are you production and quality control or strictly quality control?
What do you mean by production?
Well, you're not buying the trade, but you are calling to make sure that the trade is on schedule. So
Correct.
day one, you go in the office, you pick up a brand new job. It's 23 Main Street. You get to Main Street. Is the site guy already pre-scheduled, or are you starting from zero and building a schedule and getting the site guy on site?
Yeah, I'll start from 0 and they'll give me like a heads up, like, start, scrape the lot or like get the
Mhm,
surveyor to go ahead and stake the house or and so that's kind of the starting point, and then after that it's all the decisions are made so I can just reach out to each trade, and we're fortunate enough to pretty much work with the same trades every house. So um I can
mhm.
continue those relationships and just make it really seamless.
How old is the business?
I think it was originated in like 2009, and it's just like my boss. His name's Joe Kreider. He just within the last few years brought on like Buildertrend. Before all that, I think we were using like binders with paper, like basically everything that's in
Yeah.
Buildertrend now printed out in a binder, and so it's made everything so much easier. He's really brought a lot of processes to the table. So
That's a pretty quick growth. I feel like, Nick, how many companies do you think started like post the economic crash of 2007? Like I know I started my business in 2010 maybe, but like was
Mhm.
very small. Would you start 2012?
Me? I
Yeah,
was
somewhere around there.
14.
14.
Yeah.
Um What was the business when it started? What was the business like? Was it building homes or was it doing smaller projects, spec builds? Do you know? Sorry,
But
that was Lance.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking him. Um,
No.
I think that
Tyler knows where I started.
I think that I can't say for sure, but I just recently helped with a roof tear off at one of the original houses that they had built, and I think it was mostly houses, but I think they have dabbled in remodels, like if the client knew them well or they
Yeah,
had a good relationship there.
that's cool. How
Yeah,
many go ahead, Nick.
no, the process, like that side of it, it's um, to almost like simplify it. It's almost as though you're building from a catalog and you're adapting,
Mhm.
or I guess they're called. I guess it would be called a semi-custom, right?
Yeah.
If so, they're semi-custom homes that I want that $8 million parade of homes. So that's a bigger house than you're typically building. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
How
pretty
long did that one
substantial.
take?
Um, I think it was like a little over a year, maybe right at a year.
That's fast, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fast. I mean, I think it's totally doable, but it's just, I mean, for reference, we're building a home that is less than that, and it took us 22 months, and it took a long ass time, and we were hoping to do it in 18, to be honest. And I think it could have been done in 18. I think it could have been done in less than 18, but um, it wasn't. Um, but it's a full custom. It's not. We're not working from a we didn't go into that with I don't want to say a stock plan because I know it's not a stock plan, but we didn't go in with like a predetermined plan and everything figured out and like, hey, this is the spec we're building on. It was, hey, we're going into it. Here's the plans. We're also going to work through all the design decisions as we're building.
So
So
was
like, there's
that
just
20?
the inefficient.
Yeah. So 22 months is from the day you broke ground till the day that you're going to
Yeah,
close. Got you.
yeah.
I feel like we don't break ground until we have a lot of the decisions already made.
That and we were talking about this the other day. We had the client and the architect and the designer, and we all said it. It was like we should have waited to start construction.
Mhm.
We rushed into it for a handful of reasons, but e- even like I agree, and Brad from AFT talks about it. It's like he doesn't start construction until every decision's made. Sure, but the reality of what we're doing when it is fully custom, even if we made every single decision, they're going to change.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of where we're at. Like we were, we have been changing and or designing things up until we finish this job.
Yeah.
And we could have had, the library could have been 100% figured out. We would have had all the millwork figured out, shop drawings. It would have been massaged until it was ready for that library to be fabricated. And that's just it. Like it's not, hey, you want millwork in there? No problem. Here we know what our spec for millwork is. It's, oh, you want millwork in there? What do you want the corner detail to be like? Okay, let's now move on to what's the shelf edge look like? What's the material? How does it transition here? And you know, I'm not saying it's good nor bad. It's just, thinking about how we can implement things from a semi-custom or even a standard spec world into this full custom world where you can create efficiencies. And to be specific about, your role, things like the lighting layout and going in there and spraying all the cans and the switches and checking plumbing locations, was that learned behavior or was
Yeah,
that,
that was all
something that you
taught.
picked up?
Like that was all taught from them. This is how we do it. We go lay out the cabinets and we spray out, the flooring material and we spray out the lighting plan. So yeah, that was all just sort of processes that were already implemented before I started.
And so I guess I would like to think that if you truly have all this information, and you're coming in, plugging in, you've been doing this for 2 years, you're picking up all this process. Is there some sort of book to, hey, here's how you build? here's a checklist. Like, you're showing up on the job site. These are the things that you got to do to scrape the site. These are the things that you're looking out for.
Or
Hey,
for the company he works for is what you're asking.
yeah, I'm talking about the
Yeah,
company. It's
there's
Yeah.
like,
not like a physical book. That's probably something that's like a good idea, to be completely honest. Like we had an intern spend the summer with us, and I feel like he kind of spent time with each project manager, and like I think the day that he was there, we went over like a block plan before the masons showed up. And so there's probably a really good way, and like my videos I think are probably maybe a starting point for sort of like
mhm.
that easy way to learn each step. I guess the only thing you just wouldn't be able to train is like the eye for everything.
Yeah.
It's just something you
But I
sort of
think
pick up.
plumbing layout is a great example where it's, if you didn't know that you needed to check that, right? Then all of a sudden they go to install the toilet and the water supply's in the wrong spot, or it's intercepting the top edge of the baseboard, or you put the vanity in and the drain hits the drawer. Like, if you weren't taught to check that, you would have just assumed that the plumber knew where to put it.
Right.
And one of the builders in our Builder 20 group, he's got this checklist. It's how to build a house, and he's developed it, I think, over 40 years of being in. It's 200 pages long in a Word
Oh my
document,
God.
but
I
it's
feel like that's
everything.
just too much,
Yeah,
though.
I don't
But
know how much referencing I would be.
I know, I truthfully haven't read through it, but if you just start anywhere, it walks you through it. It's just this checklist. It's like brand new project. All right, this is how you apply for a permit. Make sure you do all of these things. It's like, all right, and Brad has one for when he starts a hillside. It's like, here's the hillside. Did you get your water permit? Because you got to get water on site because they have dust control acts in Arizona. And I have found, especially recently with everything I have going on, that when I have a checklist, it's the most, useful thing I have. And I have it now to the point where I have it in my phone where I'll be driving and being like, oh my God, I got to apply for that landmark permit. If I don't write that down in that moment, I will completely forget that I need to do that until it comes back in my mind. So now I just have this ongoing list where it literally populates, it finds time in my calendar, and it will just plug in, hey, don't forget to apply for that landmark permit, because otherwise it would never get done. But I think about that where it's, you're learning it because someone's teaching it to you, but how do you simplify that learning where it's like, hey, we just hired this new PM, instead of bouncing around with 6 7 PMs for the next 8 months, 12 months, here's a book,
Mhm.
and you're going to go start this job. And when there's a question, you can ask me, but everything should be in there. And when
Yep.
there's a question, I want you to add it to the book.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for how to solve that problem, but I agree. I mean, there was definitely some learning curves that could have been simplified on my end when I had
Mm.
first started. But I mean, to be completely honest, like if I look around at the other builders in our area, like ours, like the company that I work for is probably doing it better than most. Like I don't know how the training process would have worked at
Sure.
these other
Yeah.
places, but it just would have probably, it just would have been show up and like just follow this guy around for a
I
little
feel
bit.
like everyone has their own process. Everyone
Mhm.
does. I mean, that's the problem with residential construction. It's just everyone has their own process. There's no standard for anything. So it's just like whatever works for your market and your spec and your project, that's just what you're going to do, which creates issues for our entire industry.
Yeah.
Nick, a book like that, I mean, I understand it's like standards and basics principles, but how much different is it when you're building a custom versus a spec or a semi-custom?
Well, I think it is different, but I think the process in doing it, it's going to be this checklist of what is applicable and what is not.
Yeah,
But I do think that, I actually want to go back and look at that document, because I think about,
some light reading.
some light reading tonight as I go to sleep. 200 pages in a Word doc. But, it's it's valuable. And I think about someone like yourself, Lance, that is you're and all these people that reach out to you, where it's like, how do I become a PM? And it's like, watch my videos. I'm going to teach you everything I know. and like just follow along. And if I can teach you what I'm learning, it's a coattail effect, and then you're going to be right behind me, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're all doing. That's what Tyler does. That's what I do. That's what we're doing with Instagram and social media and the podcast. But if there was a document and I said, hey, Lance, like, I know you want to be a PM. I got this book. It will walk you through literally every step on what you got to do. It's a checklist to make sure that when you get on a job, you're not missing a step. Do you want it? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're damn right I want it. Like, I want that book. I want to, because then I'm going to flip through and be like, yeah, I'm doing everything. It's like plumbing layout. Oh, make sure plumbing drain is in location so it doesn't hit the drawer in the vanity. What the hell does that mean? And then you dig into it. It's like, I think
This
that,
is when the job slows down.
what, reading the book or not having
Yeah,
it?
I feel like the book, it's you start integrating all these details where it's like,
Listen, there's a balance. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. I'm saying that, like, there
no,
are
I'm not, dude. That's how I want to do things, right? Like that, and
agree-
because then at the end, you're not either chopping the cabinet box or
yeah.
opening the wall to move a drain, and then oh, it's behind the cabinet. Who cares? But like, it does. Like you're asking, how are you building a job in this time, and that's fast. Like it's the amount of details and effort and pre-planning and everything that goes, because the amount of time it's going to take you to sit there and lay out, what's my finished floor height.
Mhm.
Now, what's my cabinet elevation? Where are the shop drawings for the cabinet? Where, what's a drawer? Is there a dummy drawer up top? Like, all of this takes so much time. And then you have the person who's just like, hey, my standard rough in for a vanity drain is 17 inches off the floor, or like off the subfloor, whatever it is. And they're
Mhm.
just going from there. We'll make it work. We'll make it up with fittings and everything else. And it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, like there's an extra downpipe or like a down tube inside of that cabinet. You can avoid that, but it takes more time and it costs more money. And that's the difference in building a house in 6 months versus building a house in
Well,
18 months. And it's
think
not to say that like the 6-month house isn't an amazing product for what it
right.
is. It's just
Plan.
it's different.
I mean, think about countertops. It's like when the what is that noise? No, I'm just kidding.
His dogs.
I um think about countertops when the countertop guy shows up. It's like you're like, all right, you're all set. Yep, okay. And then you go to walk away. It's like, hey, what do you want for an overhang? It's like, just do your standard. Are you sure? These are inset cabinets. Usually it's a inch and a quarter or inch and a half over. It's gonna look silly. I have no idea.
Don't do
Let
your
me,
standard.
yeah, let me ask. And then it's like, and then you go through but you have that on a checklist. It's like, hey, make sure you know your overhang. Hey, do you have a disposal? Is it an air switch? I say that because we just missed 2 air switches on the last job, and the guy had to come back out and drill them. I'm
I've
like, hey,
forgotten a few of
that's
those.
cool. Of course, we all have. And I have too. But I'm on the job site. I'm like, that's cool. These have disposals. How do we turn them on? And they're like, air switch. I'm like, all right, where's the air switch? They're like, I don't know.
I shouldn't tell you guys, but I have one of those bits in my truck. Lance wouldn't approve,
I bet
but I
you do.
bought one for my grinder.
Yeah. Tyler just gets shit done.
Yeah.
Tyler's like, countertop left? The countertop guy left? Forget it.
I said I'll just run out to my truck and grab my 1 3/8 grinder bit and do that shit myself. I watched them do it, how they started. They just start at an angle and then bury it in there. One guy holds the shop back.
Well, E-Tile, he puts the sponge inside and on the outside, soaks it. That way
Oh, yeah.
you get rid of the dust. But it's, I think about all of I think about the mistakes, right? Like you walk a job and realize that something got screwed up, and then you try to understand why it got screwed up. And it's usually a very frustrating thing where it's like, we have processes in place that would have that do prevent these mistakes.
Yeah.
So what was missed? And it's like, oh, I know what was missed. We didn't draw the door swing on the floor, so the electrician didn't know that the switch couldn't go on that side of the door.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? It's like, why didn't we draw because at the time we thought it was redundant or we didn't need to do that. And it's usually that, where it's like, if it's on a sheet for you, it's good because you're checking off like, yep, did it. And for your company, now they have a tool that they're looking at, like, all right, did you do what you said you were doing? Yeah, man, you're hitting 100 out of 100.
Yeah.
You deserve a promotion.
Yeah, I don't know how Buildertrend works, but like it seems like it'd be fairly easy to do like a to-do list that you just transferred over to each job, that you could just go in there and like, the first phase, check off what you've done and what you haven't. That would definitely have
Dude, you
helped.
could sell that digital download on the TikTok shop. And there's your millions.
To-dos.
You just got to get the 200-page document from Nick. He's not supposed to give it
I
out because
can't.
it's not him.
It's not
But
mine. I can't. I signed an NDA. They will murder me.
mm,
Literally, I have signed my life away.
I think we could get our hands on it.
Tyler's gonna beat the shit out of me.
I already have the NS employee handbook.
That was mine. I
know.
made that.
I know.
Yeah.
I have it. If
Oh,
Lance
what are you gonna
wants
sell
it?
it?
If Lance
You're gonna
wants
undermine it?
Nick's
I'll
like,
give it.
Don't show this to anyone ever.
Well, Lance,
dude, I started reading this and I was like, I don't know how many pages this document. I mean, it's very good, but I'm like, man, there's a lot of information in here. It's basically like how to start with boots on the ground and then wind up how you can take over the world.
That's not
how
this.
to go. How to go from being
that's a
like
career. That's the
a
career
job,
development.
a
document.
job site sweeper to world
Mm.
domination.
Didn't you do a YouTube video on that? The handbook, maybe?
I think so. I think I alluded to it. Oh, the handbook. No, I did the pre-con.
Yeah.
I shared the pre-con agreement, but the handbook is something I worked on with a lawyer for a while, because I had sent her the one I was using, and she called me. She goes, "Hey, where did you get this?" I was like, Google. She goes, "Okay, this is illegal." I was like, "All right, let's start from scratch." But yeah, what Tyler's talking about is, my team really, as many do, want to understand how their career, grows. Like, what is, for you, right? Like, all right, you're a project manager. What is it? What's the next step? And oftentimes it's like, well, who is above you? And well, there's only 2 people above me, so my career is limited. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be. Maybe you get into a new position. Maybe you're a director of construction. Well, that doesn't exist, but maybe it will.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think I kind of struggled with that. Like when I first started, there was only project managers, and then we had the owner and the president, and then I don't know my boss's title at the time, but there was a point at which there was 3 project managers that became senior project managers, and I was not one of those, and it like really ticked me off. Like, just I thought I was further along than I truly was. It was just like some immaturity on my part. But it's I can imagine it being very difficult to paint this picture of like next steps for your employees when sort of the point of the employee is to build houses, and there's not unless we just scale this thing to a ridiculous level, there's not going to be these crazy roles that exist outside of like just project managers. And that's what's sort of a little complicated, is like the senior project managers, while they do some things in the office now, and I don't have a full understanding of what they do, they still manage houses just like I do.
Right.
And so it's kind of complicated.
But I look at it the same way as like someone that does want to stay a carpenter. And we outline that in the document too, is like, well, what if I don't want to be a super? It's like, well, then you can be a senior lead carpenter. It's like, what's the difference between a lead and a senior lead? Well, like, it's just it's your knowledge. It's how efficient you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, how does that equate to more money? And it's like, for you, right? Like, as a PM, say, how many projects do you run at a time?
Usually 3 to 4.
Okay, so let's call it 4. You in a year time, you're all of a sudden successfully running 8.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you've just doubled the
How do you
value.
go from 4 to see? This is what's wrong with Nick's brain. That's like a logical jump within a year with 2 years, 3 years experience to go from
I'm not saying.
4
Hold on, I'm not
to
being
8.
logical. I'm not being.
You are
logical.
100%. This is like, all right, I'm thinking in my head, he could easily double his output.
No, but my point is, all right, whatever. It's 5 years, right? To be more logical. My point is that over time, you should be able to effectively and successfully run more than 4 jobs
In the
if
same
you're
amount
better
of time.
in the same amount of time. So if you're producing more work, you should be able to be paid more. I'm not saying that your salary automatically doubles, though maybe you could argue that it should if you're producing twice as much work. It's the same thing with a carpenter. It's like if I'm paying a carpenter, to build a set of stairs and it takes him 2 weeks to build it, you know, it's essentially him saying, "Hey, you're going to pay me 2 weeks to do this stair. How about if I do it in any amount of time, I'll take the same amount of money from you." Okay, well, I'm budgeting, say, $10,000 to build this stair. You have you have infinite amount of time to get it done, and he bangs it out in a day or a week. There's more logical, okay? A week. And so he made $10,000, same net amount to do the same task, but he did it in half the time.
Yeah.
It's like, that I think that's where, you have more control over a situation like that.
Yeah, no, I
Where
didn't
as
think
a
about it.
business, it's,
Yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but that's
the,
a good point.
the business might not have a director of construction role, but Lance is, building 8 houses at a time, successfully closing them out. He's, doing double the amount of work as everyone else. It's like, hey, Lance, do you want to just keep doing this until you're building 10, 12 houses at a time? Or do you want to step up and maybe help provide guidance to the rest of the PMs on
Right.
how they can all go from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 8?
Yep.
And it's like, now you're the senior PM or you're the director of project management.
Yeah.
And I think that, I think from an employee standpoint, I'm putting myself in kind of like the defense mode a little bit and unintentionally, but from the employee standpoint, I think that oftentimes they're looking to the company to outline, hey, I'm a PM now. How do I become anything more than that?
Yeah.
Because, I want to make sure that my career is not going to just plateau. It's like, well, to put it simply, if you do more or better work, you're more valuable. It's like that's what it is. It's like we're equating time and effort to dollars. So if you're doing,
How often do you think that like people are more concerned with the title promotion as far as like getting a bump in pay as well? Like, is
more so on the title?
really?
Yes.
You think that people are more
I
concerned with having the title than getting like the pay? Because
Yep.
so my wife got a title promotion. And I was like, "How much more did you get paid?" And she's like, "None. I got a title promotion. Isn't that good enough?" And I got in trouble for it. But I was like, to me, I'm like, you call me whatever the hell you want. Like, if you're paying me more money, that's cool too. Like, I don't know if I need the title. Is like,
No, I've had people that we've changed the title in their opinion
dude, that's
backwards.
easy. I'd be like, yo, I'll pay you the same amount your entire career. I'll just keep changing your title.
No, we money stayed the same, and they went from a PM to a super, and it was like, it wasn't
Wait, a
necessarily
super to a PM or a PM to a super?
they went from super to PM and then
No,
PM
super to PM.
and then went from PM to super. So in a lot of people's mind, that's like working backwards,
Demotion.
but it's not. A PM and a super are very like, Lance, you're in
They
what I
are
would call a
different things,
hybrid.
but I would say that most people are looking to
They're
go
looking at it as a
from a
hierarchy
super
because
to
who does
PM.
the super report to? The super reports to the PM. But from a financial standpoint, the money and most oftentimes is identical.
Yeah.
And it's not, so there's no demotion. It's just, hey, your skill set is better suited on production and quality control versus financial communication and documentation. And I think but that's where people get hung up. It's like, yeah, I know I make the same money, but now like I went down in my career path. It's like, no, you didn't. You kind of just laterally moved into a position that you had a better skill set for.
Yeah. What would you rather get, the title promotion or the pay? Lance?
I would love to have
Come on.
both.
Both, right?
But I think
I feel like they have. I
if you
feel like they
said
have
that,
to
like,
come.
if you did say that if I I could give up the title for more, I would probably just take more. I would take more money.
Yeah, I feel like like if you give the title promotion, there has to be different compensation with it,
For sure.
or
I would
more
just not.
compensation.
I would immediately have an argument for why, if I'm getting a different title, then
Yeah.
there's obviously more responsibility that comes along with that, and then there should
Yeah,
be
I'd
more.
rather you just not change my title and give me more money. I don't care what you call me. You call me a helper. It's like if I'm if I'm getting paid to be a PM, then like I don't care what you call me.
Yeah.
Um, what I know we're wrapping things up here shortly, but what has from like your perspective, I'm 37, Nick's what, 35, 36, 35. You're
There-
20, you're 27. What has the feedback been for you online with what you are doing as far as like our industry? Do you have a lot of people that reach out to you and tell you that you are inspiring them to get out there and chase down the dream of working in construction?
Yes, a lot of younger, like high school age, college kids. I get a lot of DMs asking, like, just like I said, how do you get to where I'm at? And I've done videos on it, but I think I would hope that some of those guys will come here and watch and listen. And I think I would give a very similar answer. And I think there's a million different ways to get to where I'm at. Just even in our own company, the project managers have kind of all gotten to this point very differently. But if I was like purposefully trying to find a perfect path to this point, I would go to college for construction management. Um, I would try to find the cheapest possible college that you could get a construction management degree. And then I would straight out of college, I would try to apply as like an assistant PM or assistant super for some type of construction company. And if I wasn't successful finding that, then I would go find one of the millions of hands-on construction jobs that are out there. And I would just
Yeah.
mm,
know that you're not going to spend a lot of time doing that, but you need to learn and just sort of get your foot in the door and have something on your resume that says construction and not just college, from X, Y, or Z. And then I would just like keep emailing companies that build in your area. And I tell this to a lot of people, but if you're not in an area that has a lot of construction going on, then you have to consider potentially moving to some place that has a lot going on to up your
Yeah.
chances of finding something. Because, like I said, myself, if I would have stayed in my hometown, there might be one or two project managers that exist in that area. And
mm.
it's a small pool. So if you move to somewhere that's booming, then your chances are much greater. So,
Yeah, I mean, you could always that's good advice as far as potentially having to relocate because you can create whatever sort of market you want or niche market within your geographic area, but it's far easier to find a place that already has that than to reinvent the wheel or restructure what your given area is. It just takes so long and so much effort, and you're really fighting uphill when
mhm.
there's plenty of places that are probably relatively close to you that already afford you those opportunities without having to really reinvent everything that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I know, and I give the recommendation to a lot of people to potentially start in commercial just because there is a lot more opportunities that I recognize just from some close friends who got construction management degrees. Like they were
Yeah.
quick to get job offers right out of school. So I know that that's kind of an avenue that is maybe a little bit easier to start into. And then, maybe once you have some years of experience, you could transition that into something more residential that um, they're seeing
I think
us
that
do.
primarily also most like I ended up going back and getting a construction management degree, and I don't know how many programs within the country are residential. Like most of them are commercially based, so
Right.
it does make sense. And generally the network of people and companies that work with those colleges are going to be more directed towards commercial, so it's definitely not a bad path to go if you're gonna pony up the money and go to college and get a construction management degree. A lot of time it's gonna funnel you to that direction.
hmm I would be curious, Nick. Like, are the superintendents and the project managers that you're hiring, what are their college education? Just so I can answer some of these people who are asking me questions better. Like, what kind of qualifications are you looking for that they have?
That's hard. School has never been something I've even considered, to be honest. I know a lot of my peers definitely look at school as an opportunity to bring someone directly in and train them,
hmm
where they have the basic construction management background or schooling. Um, Most of the time, if we're either looking for someone that's experienced in high-end residential and understanding how to run a high-end residential project, um, or has the desire to want to, and has some sort of management background in terms of how to execute work. Site supers, for us, it's really understanding the details and understanding the importance of being proactive. And I judge a lot on that. We have a couple new supers that are working for us now, and I'm watching, touching base once a week, and I'm watching them be proactive about challenges that they're facing on site. And I've struggled with that in the past, where it's like, why aren't we laying that out? It's like,
Hmm.
oh, we'll get to it. And it's like, when? Because that's a critical thing to lay out at this point in the project, and I would oftentimes see it fail, or not be laid out, and then we end up running into an issue like that door and the light switch, right? Where some of the more experienced supers they know that this stuff needs to be laid out. They know that they need to be 10 steps ahead of the trade. So I think that understanding the importance of being proactive, and taking the time to really understand the job and then build the job in your mind and then on paper and then in layout, will that nets a better end result.
Yeah.
From a PM standpoint is really organization, document control, communication. And if they're strong in that side of it, that's what I'm looking for. Personable with clients, being able to um, you know, communicate with a client effectively. Oftentimes they're the first point of communication when it comes to financial changes, change orders, budget updates, project updates. So personable and good communicator and organized is really the top priorities for a PM.
Yeah.
How much weight do you put, Nick, on somebody just being like, "Hey, you're getting done high school, go get some field experience, just work for somebody for a little bit of time."
Um, I think if they're young, then yes, I think that there's definitely benefit to that. Um, I don't think it's required to have field experience to be a PM, at all. Um, but I think that if you're going to be a PM that doesn't have field experience, then I would expect you to spend a fair amount of time on site with supers to understand how a project
Yeah.
is built. As a super, I don't think it's a requirement to have field experience. However, I think it's a huge advantage if you do.
Yeah. I feel like
Um,
I don't know. I feel like for a super, it's definitely more important than a PM.
it
Just feel like
is,
there's
and
so much going on that you have to like know and be aware of and have the like your finger on the pulse of, that it's really hard. It's I don't know, it's really hard. I feel the same way about design, architects, everyone else, where it's like to be really good at that, you either just need decades of experience of being around it and like swimming in it, or you had to have done it yourself to understand like all of the pinch points and all of the areas that need your attention. It's definitely doable, but I feel as though any of those people would benefit immensely from like 1 year just go work in the field, or like go install one kitchen with somebody.
yeah.
Take 2 weeks off from work and go install a kitchen with somebody and see all that goes into it, from like setting up your laser from the get-go. I feel like that would progress somebody who wants to do like kitchen design more
Hmm.
than any sort of schooling or program or working for somebody. That stuff I feel like is huge.
Yeah. No,
That's me
I would agree.
personally.
I would agree. I think that, I mean, field experience is just helpful to understand how something goes together. The reason I say I don't think it's a requirement is because I think a lot of people that are carpenters tend to think that they need to, their progression is a super, and I've seen a lot of great carpenters become lousy supers, where it's
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you shouldn't be a super. You are a really good carpenter. You should focus on that.
I can't argue that. Well, Lance, we appreciate your time. We
Yeah.
know
Thank
you're
you guys for having me.
busy building 4 houses. Soon you'll be at 8, though. 8 houses a
Like
year
in a
Yep.
next
year,
year.
maybe like 8 months.
It's exciting.
Lance, have you connected with Aaron Witt down there from Build Witt Media?
I don't
He's
think
in
so.
Nashville. So Build Witt, Aaron's a young dude, owns a really great, successful media company that follows the dirt world.
Yeah, I know who it is now. Now it's reminding me. I've never talked to him though. I didn't know he was in this area.
Yeah, he's in Nashville.
Really?
Yes, and I have no idea where. I was going to try to reference it, but I'm not good at maps, so you'll have to find. You can look it up and it will pop
No,
up.
I'll
But
definitely reach out to him. I didn't realize he was
yeah,
in this area. That's cool.
he is super knowledgeable and just like cares so deeply about the blue collar industry and very focused on the dirt world. But I feel like especially after talking to you, that you guys have a lot of similarities.
You guys had
And
him on, right?
yeah, a
And
couple times.
is he like, I thought he did a video on this, but is he working for a company and like doing the media for them, or is he like on his own?
He owns Build Witt.
Gotcha.
So
For some
They
reason
are
I
a
thought
media.
that
They are
Go ahead.
a media company essentially.
Yeah, to summarize, he started by showing up at job sites and photographing the guys and the equipment and basically like getting them to buy into the photos. That turned into, hey, let me rebuild your website because it's kind of janky. And then it turned into, let's rebrand your business to, hey, now
They're a
we're doing,
marketing company. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, exactly. And then it turned into, let's help recruit for the industry because that's the biggest issue. And now he's into software development and leadership programs and him personally, he just goes around and visits job sites.
Yeah.
And I think Tyler, I think he said that all of what he does is almost all pro bono. It's really just an introduction to, hey, this is who we are. Like,
Yeah.
there's no pressure to work with us. I just want to come here and film and video what you got and photograph what you're doing.
I know that that's definitely how he started. I don't know. You know him better than I do. I don't know his full capacity within the business, but yeah, like, and it's taken a turn, but essentially they're like a giant marketing company that is serving the dirt world as far as helping them be more relevant within that and get marketing campaigns behind them and all of that stuff to attract employees, to attract workforce and all of that stuff. So
Okay. Yeah, that's kind
he's
of
got a lot going on though.
what I was thinking that it was about, but for some reason I thought that he worked for like an actual dirt moving company and that they had like hired him to basically, just like you said, find workers to come to them. But that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Yeah, he's working for a bunch of companies.
Well, Lance,
Appreciate your time. Where's the best place for people to find you, or all the places for people to find you if they want to check out who Lance is?
TikTok is just Lance_Ramsey, and same thing with Instagram, but there's a 46 on the end. And then I do, it's basically just the same short form videos on both platforms, so you're not missing anything if you don't go to both. So at some point though, it'll evolve, and I'm sure they'll have their own niche videos on each. But yeah, TikTok and Instagram for now.
Cool. Well, keep up the
awesome.
good work. We appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
appreciate
you
you
guys
being
for having me. Do you know about when this will go live?
Next Monday.
Perfect.
No, 2 Mondays from now.
2 Mondays. Cool.
Yeah, so you should get an email letting you know it goes live, and we'll share some content for it so you can post it.
Sounds good.
Awesome, dude.
Cool. Thank you guys.